Buying and selling and inheriting in France. The buying of property process in France is pretty similar to that of Scotland. When you make an offer for the property, then, even if it's not in writing, it legally commits you to buying. It doesn't commit the vendor to selling, but it does commit you. So don't make an offer unless you can afford it and truly want it. If the offer is accepted, you will immediately, probably on the day of acceptance, in that evening, be expected to sign the compromis de vente and put down a non-refundable deposit. This compromis de vente document is equally binding on the vendor if they've accepted your offer. Once it's signed, the vendor cannot gazump you if they get a better offer. The compromis de vente is a legal contract normally drawn up on a pro forma document by an estate agent. It's a very serious legal document, so you need to make sure that all the purchasing details are correct before you sign it. You will be expected to transfer by banker's draft a deposit of between 5% and 10% within the next 48 hours to the notaire who's handling the sale for you. If you don't have a notaire, then the estate agent can certainly recommend one. There's no problem with this, as the notaire is the representative of the French government and not you or the vendor. It's possible that the vendor has a notaire as well. Even if a 5% deposit is accepted, if you fail to proceed with the purchase, you will incur a 10% fine, which is given to the vendor. Now, the same is true for the vendor. If they fail to sell to you, they are liable to hand you 10% of the agreed purchase price. Normally, your deposit is paid to the notaire who will be acting for you. Personally, I'd be very wary about paying any deposit to an estate agent. If you need a mortgage, then you'll be required to state exactly how much the mortgage is for and to name the 3 banks or mortgage institutions which are possibly going to supply the mortgage money. So, before you make any offer for a property, you need to either have the cash available or have the agreements in principle from banks or mortgage companies that they will lend you the dosh, subject to their valuation of the property. If you're buying with a mortgage, then there will be a let-out clause in the compromis de vente stipulating that if you can't get a mortgage for this property, then the deal is off. To invoke this get-out, you need 3 letters from the 3 different banks stating that they refuse you a mortgage. So it's not really a it's not really a get out of jail free card. If you are in the process of selling a property which is going to fund this purchase, then it's also possible to insert a clause saying that your offer is subject to the completion of the other sale. Naturally, the estate agent and notaires will need to see the sales contract, compromis de vente, for the other property. Make sure that this clause is in the compromis de vente, as if you don't and your sale falls through, then you'll still be obliged to buy the property that you've made an offer on or forfeit the 10% deposit. The compromis de vente of the property that you're buying states the sale price, the commission to the estate agent, and the legal fees. If you have a French bank account, then sometimes the notaire will agree to hold a cheque for the deposit without actually cashing it. They will then pay it into their client's account a few days before the completion of the sale. The compromis will have a completion date, but typically the final acte de vente, when all the money is handed over and you get the keys, will be earlier. It all depends on when your notaire has half a day free to complete the sale purchase of the property. Don't forget that the notaire, despite being paid by you, is actually working for the state, the French tax department, to make certain that all the taxes are paid by you to the government. However, in a similar way to UK solicitors, Part of the notaire's job is to make sure the property actually belongs to the person wishing to sell it and ascertains what loans and mortgages are outstanding on it, and offer it first to the mairie, the town council, at the price the purchaser has agreed. Normally, this is just a formality. They also check out that a motorway is not going to be built through the land in the near future. All this takes at least 2 months, and often it's 3 months between signing the compromis de vente and the final act of purchase. Completion. Unlike a British lawyer in the transaction, the notaire is not there to look after your interests, simply to enact legislation and tax collection. The notaire will write giving a date for the final signature, acte définitif, acte de vente, at which stage you will need to transfer the funds for the purchase to his account, or if you're getting a loan, ask the bank to do so. The total amount, together with the tax and fees, should be in the notaire's account at least 4 days before the date he has set for the signature. As a matter of courtesy, you should address the notaire as maître. Bonjour maître, merci maître, dear maître, would you please lend me some... so on. Anyway, it's rather charming and it's nice and it is expected and it goes down well. The day the offer is accepted, the vendor's estate agent will contact a company to instantly do a diagnostic survey of the property. This is obligatory under French law for the vendor to disclose everything that's wrong with the property. If after the purchase you discover that it's got a major defect, then provided the vendor was not aware of it and didn't make you aware of it, then the vendor has to pay to put it right. Diagnostic survey is a property survey which includes a plan of the property with all room sizes and listing the living area and non-living areas. It looks at asbestos, worms, rot and everything else, and includes things like heat loss and insulation. The problem with this system, which costs over €1,000, is that the French vendors don't get the survey done until they get an acceptable offer on the property. This means that the first time that you, the purchaser, sees this survey is minutes before signing the compromis. The estate agent's required by law to read out this document, so there is no question that you, the buyer, are aware of it and its contents and the legal size and conditions of what you're buying. Of course, you're not fully aware of anything, as it's in French, and it's typically some 30 pages long and pretty technical. But if you hear words like termites, which is woodworms, amiante, which is asbestos, plomb, which is lead, stop the proceedings and find out exactly to what extent the problem exists. Asbestos is expensive to get removed, and extensive woodworm likewise. You can insist the vendors pay for these things or reduce the price to allow for this work to be done. And a clause can be inserted in the compromis stating this. If you don't, then these problems just become yours. If the problem is pretty limited, then I normally just accept it. If you find something in the diagnostic that worries you, then you have every right to bail out, without penalty. Only after reading out loud the compromis de vente can the compromis be signed. The most important option you have as a buyer now comes into play. After signing the compromis de vente in the estate agent immobilier's office, there is a 7-day cooling off period during which you can cancel the deal by sending, via recorded delivery, a letter stating that you wish to cancel. This cancellation must be in letter form, in French, and it must be by recorded delivery, and it needs to be with the agent and the notaire within 7 days. Normally, the estate agent is paid by the vendor, but this is not always true. So make sure in the compromise that the estate agent's fee is mentioned and that it is the vendor that is going to pay him and not you. Unlike a British property sale completion, the French property purchase completion is a sort of ceremony that takes place in the notaires' office. The legal charge, in the UK it's called stamp duty, you're obliged to pay of between 8 to 10% on top of the purchase price, mainly goes to the French government as a sort of house purchase tax. A proportion of this is retained by the notaire as their fee. You will have sent your notaire all the money for the purchase and he's received it at least 4 days before. And if there's a mortgage involved, your bank will have sent the dosh to the notaire. The sale cannot go ahead until the notaire has cleared all the money into their client's account. If the money is coming from the UK and started out in pounds, whatever you do, avoid sending the money to France using your high street bank. Their charges and exchange rate are appalling and it'll take a long time. It's far better to use a currency exchange company like TorFX to do this. If you open an account with TorFX by using the code below or using the details in the information sheet about this video, they will give you a special introductory offer gift and, more importantly, move your money from the UK bank to the French notaires bank at favourable rates and very quickly. I've been using them for 15 years and I've purchased 2 properties and 2 boats using their service. Immediately before this, the estate agent will normally accompany you to visit the property you're buying in order to make sure everything is okay with it. It hasn't burned down or anything overnight. And any furnishings that you are agreed to buy or keep are still there. The supplies of water, gas and electricity will have been cut off. You can discuss this with the estate agent. They often want you just to keep them all on and just take them over. You can agree to take over the existing supplies, but both as a seller and a buyer, I've burnt my fingers with this on a couple of occasions. Okay, it's inconvenient not having these services for a day or two, but you can save long-term hassle and often get a much better deal starting from scratch. I use Total for gas and electricity, and I've had a very good experience from them. If you use the code mentioned in the video description page, they will give you a tiny bonus of about €3, and they'll give me €3 as well. So it's not really a big deal, but they are a good, cheap organisation and reliable. On completion, you need to arrive at the notaires with your passport to formally identify yourself. It's all friendly but formal, and normally you sit round a boardroom table and the lead notaire identifies you, the buyer, and the vendor by their dates of birth, nationality, and places of residence. Then the sales contract is read out, and both you and the vendor initial every page and sign the last page properly. If you're a couple buying jointly, then of course you both do this, so there will be 4 initials at the bottom of each page and 4 signatures on the last page, to which the notaire adds his signature and the official stamp. The notaire then hands the cheque for the purchase of the property to the vendor, and the vendor hands you the keys to the property, and perhaps you shake hands. The notaire hands the estate agent the cheque for their commission, and that's it. The property's all yours. Off you go. French Napoleonic law favours the children of any person owning a property or money when they die. It makes sure that the children will inherit everything their parent owns. If you're a married couple, then on the death of one of you, everything automatically goes to the children. The surviving spouse is allowed to keep €20,000, and that's it. The children get the house, the car, the boat and all the rest of the dosh. They're obliged to find somewhere for their surviving parent to live, either with them or in a bedsit. If you're a married couple and you totally trust your children and their partners, then this might be okay. But more and more French people are uncomfortable with this, and they choose to buy their property en tontine, jointly owned. When a property is purchased by a couple en tontine, then, on the death of one of the parties, the surviving spouse becomes the sole owner, and it is retrospectively regarded as having been that owner since the acquisition of the property. If you're a married couple or have a civil partnership, then there is no capital gains tax or inheritance tax to pay. If you're a couple living together, then CGT is payable at 60% on the half that you inherit en tontine. You need to discuss other solutions to this with a notaire or with an accountant. Another very good way to buy is SCI, Société Civile Immobilière, a French property company structure. Your notaire can set this up for you before you complete the purchase of the property. Basically, you're setting up a limited company to own the property that you're buying. It allows you to choose who will inherit the company and therefore the property that you're buying. As a couple, for example, you can own 50% each, and on the death of one or other of you, the other half automatically goes to the survivor. If you're not married, this is a good way of making sure your partner keeps their home. Naturally, there can be several owners of an SCI with a different percentage of ownership. If you want your property to go to people to whom you're not related, then you could just give them 1 or 2% of the shares of the SCI. A bit like a limited company in the UK, it protects the property from being seized by creditors if you personally fall into debt. It's going to cost you between €1,000 and €3,000 to set up the SCI. And if you intend letting out the property as an Airbnb sometimes, then you must tell the notaire setting up the SCI so that that right can be incorporated. There are some downsides, like because it's a company, not an individual owning the property, then you may not qualify for local grants for solar panels or certain sorts of central heating. You really need to find an English-speaking French notaire to advise you. But in my experience, this is a very good method of purchasing a French property. At the same time, in order to protect other items like savings, cars, boats and so on, you need to have both French and English wills. In the English will, you will leave whatever you want to in both the UK and France to whoever you want. The cost of making such a will normally be pretty low, as English lawyers make their money being the executors and distributing your assets. This can all be done by email, except for the signing of the will, where you will probably need to go to their office. The French will, which is enacted by your French notaire, has to be in handwriting and in French. It basically says that it wants the French authorities to follow the inheritance laws of your own country, the UK, and whatever French assets you have are left to whoever you want, your spouse, partner, or whoever. Normally, your notaire will email you a French version of your will, and then you can copy it out at home in your own handwriting and bring the finished version to your notaire's office to sign and have witnessed. Again, the fee for this is normally just a few €100. You'll need to organise suppliers of gas, water and electricity to your new property, and it can all be done online and perhaps a couple of phone calls, which the estate agent could do for you if your French is not up to it. There are some very good deals out there, and I pay mine by monthly standing order. Occasionally, various French organisations are going to ask you for a proof of residence, And the French utility companies have a form which you can access online in which they will confirm your residence. You just download it as a PDF file and forward it to who's ever asking. This proof is only valid for 3 months, so this is a really useful online facility to have available to you. My gas and electricity company are supplied by Total, as I said, who offer me the best deal I could find in France for my gas and electricity. If you sign up online with them and use the code 106761636, then they will give you €20 and give the same to me. Originally, all estate agent work in France was carried out by a notaire, and although that role has diminished, many still offer property for sale. It's worth looking at their websites, particularly for older properties. French estate agents, immobilières, charge a staggering 4 to 8% on top of the sale price for finding a buyer and filling in and getting the appropriate signatures on a compromis de vente. Almost all property for sale in France is offered online by 4 organisations, and almost every agent in the country lists their property for sale with these organisations. They are Notaires, who I think are the best and the most efficient, Logique Imo, who are fine but not so efficient in only sending you property that suits your criteria, Maison et Appartement, and Le Figaro Immobilier. There are dozens and dozens of British sites that try to sell property in France that is owned by Brits, but nearly all these listings are vastly overpriced and very few genuine French estate agents use them. So, with a company like Notaires, you fill out their online form for the area you're looking for, the type of property, how many rooms, and most importantly, the maximum price, and you press search. If you give them your email address, they will keep you constantly updated. The listings on Notaires are all from local estate agents, and once you see something you like, contact the agent directly for help and more information. Most agents are part of a chain like Orpi, La Forêt, Century 21 and so on. Actually, behind that name is just a local estate agent, so it's impossible to know how good an agent is just by their brand name. Many speak some English, and they all want you as a customer, so they will persevere with you. As a buyer, there is little advantage, if any, in just using a sole agent. You will find some properties are on at slightly different asking prices with different agencies. This is because their commission varies, and it's normally just added to the price by the seller, who is asking them to sell their property. When you view a property, you'll be asked by the estate agent to sign a bon de visite. This is to ensure that if you subsequently visit the same property again, maybe months later or even years later with another agent, the first agent who showed you the property will get 50% of the commission. Be aware, when you're negotiating to buy, you're negotiating with both the seller and the estate agent. The estate agent will frequently reduce their commission, particularly if it's in the 8% region, in order to get the sale. You need to beat the price down very hard. The sellers will always have an idea of the minimum price that they will accept, and the estate agent will also have a minimum commission that they will take. The national average price of a family apartment or house in France is around €3,000 per square metre. Now, there are wide variations, with the property in the countryside, which few French people want to buy, being far, far less, and Paris being more like €9,000 a square metre. Frequently, the estate agent, agent immobilier, sales staff are on a commission-only employment deal. Legally, they have to be paid a minimum wage, but that's deducted from their first sales commission of each month. This makes them very, very keen to do a deal. They also get a commission on the sale if they introduced the property for sale to their agency. Therefore, there are some properties on which the agent will get double commission. Be very wary. If they're trying to persuade you that one property is better than another, it may be true, or it may be a double commission for them. You'll find most agency websites are in both English and French, and almost every office will have a salesperson who can speak some English. In areas like the Dordogne and the Lot, French estate agents employ local British people to sell for them. French immobilier estate agents are much like British estate agents. Some good, some bad, some honest, and some not so. You just need to be wary. Some agents will offer the service of finding good artisans, workers, to help make whatever alteration, changes, repairs you may want to make to your new property. Again, be wary. Sometimes the hard-pressed sales personnel are on a commission from the artisans, the workers, who recover this by sticking it onto your bill at the end of the job. France is one of the most heavily taxed countries in Europe, so there is a thriving black economy which the government is fully aware of. They've countered it quite cleverly. If you employ a cleaner or gardener legally, then you will get 50% of their fees deducted on your next tax return, half the cost. This, of course, has resulted in agencies starting up to administer the system. You need to look online for an aide à domicile particulier and add the name of the town you live in. These agencies will supply cleaners, babysitters, gardeners, dog walkers, and if you're ill, they'll cook meals for you or do your shopping. The best thing about these agencies is that they're legal and the government pays 50% of the charge of the total bill. The other smart French government move is that if you employ legal builders, plumbers, electricians and so on with a proper VAT, TVR, tax sur la valeur ajoutée bill, then when you come to sell, this is set off against the up to 50% capital gains tax you could be facing. It simply is not worth paying people to do work black. It's going to cost more in the end, and from my experience, the final price ends up being about the same. Many English-speaking people buy large properties at very low prices in the countryside, which are cheap because they're not in much demand by the French. Now, frequently they're very difficult to sell on, except to other Brits or expats. Unless you're a country person and you want to look after horses, llamas or emus or something, or you are living in the country in the UK, you will eventually find it somewhat boring and inconvenient if you live there full time. Most of the people I know who purchase a property in the country end up selling up after a few years and buying in a town where there's decent facilities. Town life with being able to bell a takeaway or a Uber or choose from half a dozen different cafes and restaurants where you want to relax over a glass of wine or a coffee or dinner. And they're much more authentic French. France is very agricultural, but since the Industrial Revolution, as is shown in Clarkson's farm in the UK, so much is automated and needs very few workers. So the original village inhabitants have all moved to the towns or cities. If you decided to purchase a property in France, your first move should be to open a proper French bank account so that you can pay your utility bills and have a French checkbook. This sounds easy. Although it is improving, the French banking system is pretty antiquated, and with EU laws it's not that easy to join. One big difference is that national banks are split into regions, and the management system of one region is often different from the next door region, even though the name is exactly the same. In the past, I've banked with the Credit Lyonnais and the BNP Paribas, both of which were an absolute pain and awful to deal with. I now bank with the Crédit Agricole, who've got faults, but are head and shoulders above the others. I bank with a branch in my town, but they do have a dedicated online bank for Brits called Britline.com, and it appears to be user-friendly. The other French bank which encourages foreigners like us is HSBC, and apparently they are meant to have an English speaker in all their high street branches. Don't think opening a bank account in France is a walk in the park. It's not, and it requires perseverance. Do not use banks for receiving pounds sterling, as they will charge like angry bulls. Use a system like TorFX. If you're moving to France permanently, I really recommend that you retain your UK bank account. It really is very useful, and if you close it, then opening another one with a French address is virtually impossible. The best solution, in my opinion, is simply to change your bank address to that of a friend or a relative who lives in the UK. Banks send out very little in the way of snail mail letters these days, so the friend or relative will only have to forward the very occasional new bank card to you, and you can do everything else online. Yes, your French telephone number will be a problem, and you probably can't use it, but you can do all your banking online through a laptop or a tablet. So that's really it, except clocking into the French government systems that's quite challenging and time-consuming. If you want me to talk about all that or have questions about the buying process, then please use the comments section on this YouTube page. If you press the subscribe button as well, it would be really helpful, and it would help me to get this channel going, and I'd be awfully grateful. I've turned this video into a little booklet in case you feel you'd like to have it in hard copy to refer to, and it's available in my books library website, gentlesailing.com. Just scroll down past all the sailing books. It's in PDF form, and you can either print it out yourself or get a printer to print it out for you. Thank you for watching, if you've got this far, and I really hope it was helpful. I absolutely love living in France. I adore it, and I'm sure you will too. So come on over. Bye. My library of digital sailing books is at gentlesailing.com, so you can buy them as instant downloads. There's a link to a printer who can convert them to hard copy if that's what you prefer. I've just totally updated and republished French Canal Routes to the Mediterranean, which is now in its 12th edition and is fully up to date with new information, charts and pictures. Recently I published Your Boat in the Sun, which proved an instant popular success. It's about where to keep your boat in the Mediterranean or the Caribbean and the costs and the logistics involved. The Atlantic Crossing Guide has become a bestseller, and it outsells most of the others, probably because it's arguably one of the most comprehensive guides to sailing to the Caribbean that's available. The Gentle Sailing Route to the Mediterranean is one of the most popular publications that I have. It describes how to coast hop all the way to Gibraltar without having to spend a night at sea. There are books about marinas in the Med, sailing in the Caribbean islands, as well as a book on simple navigation and even a Pacific Ocean crossing guide, and a book about just living aboard a sailing boat. Sailing to France with French customs explains exactly what to do in order to get your passport stamped when you arrive, and all the other official documentation. Anyway, it's all at gentlesailing.com, so please do pay the site a visit and browse through my publications if you have a moment. Thanks. Fair winds.